Back in their cramped apartment, the stench of stale cigarette smoke and despair hung heavy in the air. Christine, their mother, lay passed out on the couch, her face pale, her breathing shallow. Alice and Charles, accustomed to the sight, exchanged a weary glance. When their father, Lee, was in the Navy, Alice and Charles spent their young lives traveling from coast to coast with their parents Lee and Christine and their older brother Jacques. They developed friendships with children from all backgrounds and were well on their way to becoming well-rounded adults despite the abuse they endured at the hands of their parents. Then, one day, everything changed. Their father left the Navy. The military provided an extended family that kept the children safe and fed despite their circumstances. They were no longer under the watchful eyes of other concerned parents. Christine decided it would be best to move the family to Memphis, Tennessee, where she had a support system. That decision changed the lives of everyone in the family forever. The crack epidemic was exploding in the inner city, and Christine's entire family went from successful men and women to crack-addicted prostitutes in less than a year. These times were so dark that to bring them to life with words would be to destroy souls. "I'll make dinner," Alice said softly, her voice barely a whisper. Charles nodded, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. He knew that Alice, despite her own pain and fear, was the strong one, the anchor that held their fragile family together. By the age of 7, Alice had already been shot, raped, and beaten viciously. Her childhood never truly existed. Though Charles and Alice were twins, Alice always behaved like the older sibling. Their brother Jacques had a different biological father and lived with him most of the time. Jacques was the lucky one. His father John was a middle-class businessman, and he lived in a safe neighborhood in a warm house with food. As Alice prepared a meager meal of ramen noodles, her mind drifted back to the earlier encounter with the bullies. She had always felt different, out of place, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Charles, too, shared this feeling of alienation, a sense of not belonging that haunted their every step. They had tried to fit in, to blend in with the other kids in the projects, but their differences, their strange connection, their shared memories of a life that seemed like a distant dream, set them apart. They were outsiders, misfits in a world that had no place for them. Alice was a very pretty and naive girl, and Charles could see the way the drug dealers looked at his sister. He also saw his young cousins being sold for drugs, and vowed he would never let that happen to Alice. As the twins grew older, the challenges they faced intensified. Charles, desperate to protect his mother and sister from the streets, turned to selling drugs, a dangerous path that led him in and out of juvenile detention centers. He grew more and more frustrated every time he was locked up. He could not protect anyone from behind bars. In desperation, he picked up a payphone after being arrested by an undercover cop. He made a collect call to the man he had come to hate. He was surprised when his father's new wife accepted the charges. "Hello, Annette," greeted Charles politely. "Lee, your son is in jail again," yelled Annette, ignoring Charles's greeting. Charles could hear his father's angry footsteps through the phone. He braced himself for the disdain he knew was to come. "Charles, I'm not bailing you out this time," Lee hissed into the phone receiver. "Nice to hear from you too, Dad," Charles shot back, annoyed. "This is an expensive call, Charles," warned Lee. "Alice is about to be sold for crack, and I can't stop it from here. You must do something." "What in the hell?" Lee choked. "How long has this been going on? Why didn't anyone tell me? You have been busy with Annette and your new son, and I was taking care of Alice," retorted Charles. Charles hung up the phone. No matter how distant his father had become, he still loved Alice. He loved her too much, and that was the problem.